This is video 2 in the series, Breathe New Life into Your Relationship. This video is on the 7 deadly communication barriers. I'm your host, Jonathan Parker. Relationships don't just suddenly fall apart. Generally, when a relationship or a marriage of many years ends, there are warning signs long before the separation. Nobody just wakes up one morning and says to their partner, "Oh, dinner last night was great, but this relationship's over now. I'm leaving today." If you're concerned about your current relationship or your relationship is ended, you want to make sure that you have a better foundation for the future of your relationships. You need to assess warning signs. Think about how you began losing interest in each other. Think about how your conversations became less interesting and less frequent. Think about how your intimacy dwindled. When relationships end, they've been ending over time. Have you discussed plans with your partner on how to enrich the relationship? Were you afraid to bring things up in a conversation? Or was it easier just to simply avoid the subject and hope things would improve? If your communication wasn't connecting, then when the relationship ends, it can seem to happen out of the blue, but actually it was heading that way for some time. You might have assumed, for instance, that things were okay, and you didn't notice the warning signs. If a relationship is not satisfying, you can be sure those signs were there. So one day someone says, "This relationship just isn't working for me. It's not satisfying to me. It's no longer what I want." And that, of course, can be devastating and painful. But there's solutions. It doesn't have to be the end. Here are some of the communication barriers that cause most relationships to deteriorate, the ones that deteriorate. See if they sound familiar to you. Assumption. You have an innate distrust in what the partner that you have is telling you. So you make assumptions about what they're saying. You assign your interpretation to your partner's motive based on what you assume they mean. And that might be as far as the East is from the West. The second communication barrier is thinking about your point of view while your partner's talking. You're formulating your objections or what you want to say next. So you end up really missing what their point is. And you end up talking at each other and not to each other or with each other. A third communication barrier is selective hearing. To put it simply, you only hear what you want to hear. Your partner's position on issues are ignored because they maybe stress you out or you don't agree with them. Or maybe you think your partner's nuts or just plain stubborn. So you actually don't connect with your partner's words. A fourth communication barrier is judging. Instead of trying to understand where your partner's coming from, you're more interested in assigning labels. You're selfish, you're boring, you're crazy, you're a witch, and other labels. Well, besides the fact that they're probably not true, they're only your projection, your opinions, and they greatly diminish objectivity, and they block any meaningful dialogue from taking place. A fifth communication barrier is offering a quick solution. When you hear your partner complain about something, you immediately start formulating your solution to the problem, as if that would end the problem for good. But this actually stifles communication. The solution that you recommend might be technically sound, but your approach is not connecting with your partner's needs. A sixth communication barrier is misdirection. Instead of facing problems and issues head on, you have a tendency to joke about them, or you bring up unrelated issues to misdirect the conversation. For example, if your partner's bringing up issues about the monthly cash flow, you might suddenly feel an urge to talk about your son's day at school, or maybe your day at work. A seventh communication barrier is over-agreement. This is a pretty common problem among partners who want to avoid any kind of confrontation. So instead of listening, you just simply agree to what the partner's saying. Yes, dear. Yes, okay. Yeah, it's okay. Fine. Whatever you want. The problem with this approach is that, yes, you're agreeing, but you're not actually hearing what your partner's trying to tell you. These are just some of the examples of the most common communication barriers that can result in massive miscommunication between partners. I suggest you memorize those so you can catch yourself when you do them and pay attention to how they creep up in your conversation. In the third video in this series, I'm going to tell you about a way to communicate with your partner that can ensure that you are hearing all they're thinking and feeling so you can rebuild your relationship on a strong footing. And I often have a lot more information on relationship building on my website, keepourlove.com.